There was a theorist back in the 60s, he's still alive. It's Christopher Alexander. And Christopher Alexander wrote a book called A Pattern Language, in which he was looking at architecture, cities, all the patterns that make those things at different scale. And he addressed the countryside in it, agriculture. And he said, and I thought this was a very interesting statement, that it was immoral that places of productivity, meaning the fields, forestry, would not be at the same time public. They had to be public while being productive, you know. There were spaces of production, but they should be open. So he was thinking of something like a public countryside, right? Or agriculture as a public space. Of course, it's very difficult to imagine why you would want fields of monoculture to be public. It's absolutely uninteresting, it's flat, and but precisely by making them public, you would make them completely different from monocultural stuff. It would become volumetric environments in which it would be not only interesting but enjoyable to live, to go through, to meet people, and not only people but also animals, plants, and things like that. Public for all kinds of species. I used to live, when I was a kid, just across the street. There was a little square in Paris, you know, a kind of public garden of small size, which was not a kind of Haussmannian, typical and standard thing in Paris. It was a kind of leftover of probably religious institution in the 18th century. So it was a kind of special place. And there were hedges, and there were trees, and there were things. And I remember very, very vividly that one of my mind game in this square was to imagine that there was a wild man or somebody, a Tarzan, you know, living there, and that nobody noticed. And I would wonder, how could he do so that nobody notices him, right? And this was something that filled me with joy, to imagine that a kind of Baron Perché, a kind of Tarzan, would live there without being noticed by everyone. And I would tend to think that places where you can play that game are interesting public spaces. Places where you can't, because everything is, you know, understood at first sight, right? Where everything is exposed, tends to be a little boring for me. It's Square Comaille. It's Rue du Bac, in the 7th arrondissement in Paris, yes. And much later, I learned that a guy who lived there was somebody I admired very much later. And I knew that he must live somewhere there because of some of the things that he wrote in his books, and that was Guy Debord. So this added a kind of new reason. Maybe he was in a way the savage guy that nobody saw and could see, and that was never photographed, and he lived just in Square Comaille.